Welcome to I Finance Mortgage. I am your host, Tiffanie Phillips, and today I have investor Joe Ramos, and he is going to be going into detail about the certain markets that he is investing in and just the best tips and tricks to get started. So, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right. And just to kind of get started, why don't you go into how you got started into real estate or investing and, just a brief summary on your journey.
Okay, so the way I got started actually was I was in the car business, and I was selling cars and making commission, making money, and I had a family friend who was our tax guy who basically suggested that I should try and maybe start investing in something or thinking about getting a tax haven. And I was renting a place with a couple of friends of mine, and I was taking the money directly to the owner and putting it into his bank account. And I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And my parents did teach me the value of money. They were definitely more risk adverse. I mean, they had a home and they had a rental property, but other than that, they didn't really go further.
Yeah.
And so they did teach me the value of the dollar. And so I just started trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I finance a house? So I started building my credit by buying a car that I actually didn't need. I already had a paid off truck, but my parents thought I was crazy. I'd pull up in this car and they're like, "Oh, did you borrow that from the dealership?" I'm like, "Nope, I actually I bought it." And so, but it helped me prepare to kind of build my credit, so that way a year later I'd have good credit and then I could finance a house. And so I ended up buying a house, and I rented out 2 of the rooms to my friends. So I was like, "Hey guys, if I buy a house, you guys move in here." And so it just kind of worked out. My payment was $1,350 a month. I put
what year?
2008. yeah.
Don't get too excited.
Yeah, a little while ago, but
2008.
But I think what it is just. It's just like doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just ended up doing it. I rented out the rooms to my friends, $500 a piece. So basically, after that, it kind of clicked, and I'm like, oh my gosh!
And you were making the rest would probably cover everything else, even if you still put 5 in, and then that would kind of go.
Yeah, well, I mean, what was cool is in 2008 there was that I did the FHA loan. That was the first and only one I've ever done, and I wouldn't really suggest it. We were talking going forward. But it worked out in that sense, and I put $6,800 down. I actually got $10,000 back on my taxes because there was the Obama credit, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
amazing.
Crazy. Because instead of paying taxes, I was actually getting money back in taxes. So
you're building wealth too.
Right.
Now your friends, just all of you, instead of your money. Even for them, if they wanted to pay rent, at least now it's going to you,
Mm-hmm.
It's going to building your wealth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then after that, I just was trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I keep on doing this? Right. Yeah. So, working in the car business, I worked commission. So I just tried to kind of bust my butt to try and make more money and keep on doing it. So, 4 years later, took me a little while, but I ended up figuring out, okay, I can get another one. So I got another one that was an investment property. Had to put 20% down on that one because something kind of went hinky with me trying to get this other property. But that was a great deal. I mean, if I could have bought, 4 or 5 of those, I mean, it would have been amazing. But, every time was kind of a struggle because I was doing it myself, and I did have to actually, this is one thing that I tell people, I actually had to pay more in taxes, and take less write-offs so that way I can show more income.
Yeah.
Because I'd call my tax guy, then I'd call my loan guy and be like, okay, can I buy something yet? He's like, no, you can't afford anything.
Yeah.
So
at this point, do you utilize bank statement loans?
I have not used any yet. Okay. I usually do all DSCR because I don't work for anybody anymore.
Well, at this point, yeah.
And one thing I will say on that, which it was really interesting going into this and getting more around other people who are trying to do this, going to conferences and things like that. I actually have a lot of experience that I didn't realize was so important actually going into this because I did all these by myself for so long, and then when it went to the DSCRs, it was cake for me.
Just so.
And other people are like, how are you getting these loans? And I'm like,
But you don't need any of your stuff.
Well, that,
Yeah,
but
like
I had
it
also,
goes off the rents.
yeah, well, and I built the experience on all those personal properties I had bought, and then other rental properties that I bought, and now going into it, now I can do a DSCR no problem because I have good credit, and I'm experienced. It's the experience that I didn't realize was so important with those.
Which helps
those
too,
loans.
because once you are experienced with the DSCR loans, most lenders, investors, it's going to be even less documentation too.
Right.
Like once you you might still have that, it might take a little longer when you're building the portfolio, but like once you are experienced, then it's almost just like less risk.
Right.
So a lot more smoother.
Well, and then when you find somebody like yourself that you constantly work with all the time, it makes it easier because you already have all the documentation that you need, and I don't have to keep on providing it over and over again.
And that's mainly just like the property.
Yep.
So right now the DSCRs still are a little tricky just with the cash flow. Mm-hmm. So especially, but we're going to go into some other markets because he is invested in multiple different markets. So that probably isn't as hectic as it is out here in California because of how high the prices are, how high the interest rates are. It definitely takes a little longer, or it's been a bit of a struggle to get that cash flow needed.
Yeah.
And Joe is investing in multiple markets. So he is in California, Ohio, Florida, and Georgia. So incredible. And how do you manage such a diverse portfolio? And like what are the benefits of this like geographical diversity?
So first of all, as far as like managing them, it really depends on the property. Some of them I self-manage, but really having a good team in the area, sometimes you don't even have to have a property manager. Yeah. So, having like for the Airbnbs that we have in Florida, we have a good cleaner and her husband's a handyman, and they kind of watch the property, tell me what's going on, right? I do have, another set of cleaners for my Airbnbs here in California, and so they kind of oversee it. I find people, handymen, people like that in different areas. I've got a couple, long-term rental properties like the ones that I was talking about earlier that I bought years ago that I have in Riverside, and those ones I self-manage because I'm pretty close to, proximity-wise. And then as far as, Georgia, I specifically bought, 3 like in the same town and just have an awesome property management company.
Awesome.
And so that's actually what made me want to buy more there, was the fact that they were a good property management company. I felt comfortable, okay, I can buy more properties and then I can have them deal with it. Same with my lady in Ohio. In Ohio, going back to like the different markets, so geographically, I like Georgia for single family. I like Ohio for multifamily. Yeah. And then Florida, we have some Airbnbs, as well as now we just acquired 4 pad splits, which I don't know if you've heard of pad split yet. But,
you can explain it.
Yeah, so basically it kind of goes back to how I actually originally started. So what you do is you actually take out the living room, dining room, and you build them into bedrooms, and then you stage them, and it's more for like a affordable housing kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's not, like low end or anything, because you're still staging it, you're paying for the utilities. But if you turn, let's say like we turned a 4-bedroom 2.5 bathroom into a 10-bedroom 3-bathroom.
Yeah.
So now, we're renting out each room for $800 a month. Wow. And the payment on something like that
And what state is that in?
So Florida, Jacksonville.
Florida. Okay.
So we have 4 in Jacksonville.
Wow.
And so now, my business partner Jake is actually starting a property management company, since we have so many there. And the guy that we originally tried to hire just wasn't really working out, and there aren't too many property management companies that do pad split, so we're going to try and see if we could even poach some other investors and oversee their properties to kind of help pay for the management costs that we are incurring on ours. and it's not like newer, but it's a little bit, it's newer in the sense of like what people know about it. Like it really started in Georgia, actually, funny enough, because I invest in Atlanta, and I actually do flips in Atlanta, but my rental properties I like to be about 30 minutes outside the city. And so yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the newest thing that we're doing is the pad split, because we can raise money from our investors, say, $50,000 for the down payment and the the staging of the property, and we can give them returns, and then we can pay for the property and still get some money back on our end, because if we're making $8,000 in rents, even after all the costs, I mean, there's still $3,000 to $4,000 left over.
Wow.
So,
I feel like you're a numbers guy, like to scale.
Well,
you're definitely the scaler of the
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, because I don't know, I always liked math and everything, but it's funny because my dad growing up, I actually bought my truck in high school, and I had a $210 monthly payment.
Yeah.
And what he did was we actually had a spreadsheet at home, and he would show me like how much money would go to principal, how much would go to interest.
That's so great.
And so
you picked up pretty young.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, I want to pay this thing off as fast as possible. So, I paid that truck off pretty fast. And I think that is so funny. I ended up getting into the car business, and then I got into finance. So I actually did, I learned about, all the doing loans for people for cars. So it was just kind of when that happened, my dad was like, oh, this is super random, but it makes sense, So yeah,
No,
even to today, you know what I mean? Like I could tell you all the numbers in my head, probably of what the payment on each property is, you know what I mean?
That is
just because I'm just so like I don't know, just detailed in that instance. So, but yeah.
So how do you? And it seems like you have a lot of different expertise in each state. Like, did that come over time, or is that something that you kind of pre-planned? Did you scope out the areas the Airbnb is going to be better here? Mm-hmm. Was that kind of trial and error? Because it seems like you kind of have it set where it's you do Airbnbs, I think will always be good in California, mm-hmm. definitely location. And then Florida is also another big one, but then you have more long-term in Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and going back to what you're talking about with the cash flow and the DSCR, my strategy in those rentals in Georgia has been is honestly, buy them cash, and then I will fix them, and then I'll refinance them, I'll get the money back, and then cash flow, and then buy another one. So, I guess for an example, the second one I bought there, I bought it for $138,000. I actually got my friend's dad involved, so he invested with me. So he and I split it. We bought it cash, and then we put in $25,000 to fix it up. We refinanced it at $226,000, and then the payment's $1,000 a month. It's renting for $1,800, and we got all our money back. Nice. And so once he saw that, he was like, "Oh man,
now he's on board." Yeah.
so he's invested.
Now he's ready. That kind of leads me to my next question. It sounds like you kind of have a couple investors, mm-hmm. or here and there, or maybe even family and friends. Do you go and raise capital for all the projects, more to random, more out to strangers, or do you kind of keep that raising within?
So that's a good question. So basically that's my main focus right now is just raising money, because obviously, as we figured out, I had bought, properties that I had bought, and then, I met my business partner, Jake, and he and I bought properties together, and now it's all right, well, what are we going to do now? So that's when we started a fund. So we actually started a real estate fund, and then we started raising money to buy those Airbnbs in Florida. And then from there, it just kind of kept on growing. And that's actually how I met Bailey, which is how I met you, is through Lady Amy Majuri. She raises, she teaches people how to raise private capital, and it just kind of worked out. She was here in Long Beach, not too far from where I live, and so I went there, and after that kind of joined her community and really started, surrounding myself with other people who were doing the same thing, because that was my target on my end of the business. And so because I'm pretty good at networking with people and talking to people, so we are open to other people that we don't know, but always still will try to create a relationship with them first. Like, because with our fund in particular, we actually have to have a relationship with them in order for them to invest in the fund. We can't unsolicit. But in some of the other projects that we've done, you know what I mean, Jake's family's invested, my family's invested, my friend, that's how I got into Georgia. Actually, he moved out to Georgia about 5 years ago, and he told me about this little town, and that's how I started investing in those properties. And then his dad, moved out there as well, and I just kind of was like, hey, you wanna invest with me, because my buddy
Might
Drew,
as well, you're out there.
well, my buddy Drew is like like talking to his dad about it, and then he ended up selling his house here in California, had some cash he was sitting on, and had it invested in the market, and it just wasn't really doing anything. So
it's not going to do as much as,
yeah.
especially if you're so active, like you're going to make that money work.
Right. Well,
like for him in the first 1 to 2 years. Like what you can make, especially with all the appreciation going on, like what they can make in the next like 7 years, because I think a lot of the stocks are, they pitch that number to you, like you'll save X amount, it's like in 7 years, or so
yeah, but it's like
that's
people
definitely going to be a lot more.
People don't look at the bigger picture, just like you're saying. You're going to gain, you're not only going to have cash flow, but you're going to have equity, and especially if you buy the properties well enough, you know what I mean? That first one that we bought for $96,000 out there is worth $180,000. It's only been, I don't know, 3 years or something like that. So that's just wild, and and the payments like less than $500 a month, and it's running for $1,350. So it's like no brainer. Right? You know what I mean? And someone else is paying it off for you. So, and we don't owe very much, and we've got most of the money back out of that one. And then we bought the next one. And then you can
always still refinance later and take out.
Yes. Well, and
it's like a like forever kind of piggy bank, or you can keep going to it and kind of taking out when you need it, just like that safety net.
Well, and that's, it's interesting you say that, because like the ones here in California, and that's one thing that I understand now, like what people talk about, like you're saying, okay, you can't really cash flow in California, but you're going to gain equity. But then, yes, if I take that money out of those houses, and that's exactly what I did, is take money out of those houses, I'm still cash flowing, not as much, but then I can go buy something in another market. But then you have to look at
as long as there's a benefit, it's not always going to be one thing, or like the cash flow at the moment. It's the same thing with some people refinancing. Like maybe you're not lowering your payment, but you're taking out $120,000. There's a benefit. Like maybe your rate, maybe we're refinancing you and it's not going lower.
Right.
But as long as there's a benefit, but you get $120,000 is what you wanted in hand, and now you get to go invest something. So there's the benefit. So that's going to make our refinance make sense. If it was just like a rate and term, and then we wouldn't do it, because your rate's not going lower, you're not saving money, it's just costing you. There's no point. But I like how you mentioned that too in California, because I do have a lot of investor friends that are still they very experienced, and they're still purchasing in California, even though that there might be maybe a year, maybe 2 years, there could be several. They might be taking a loss on the cash flow, but ultimately it's California. It's California, and they're looking at the long term, the long term goal of, even if they lose a little now, what they're going to gain in 7 to 10 years is still going to benefit.
Right. Well, and I think that's why, people just need to kind of get with a loan officer or a tax preparer or something, because everybody's circumstance is different. Right. So
every situation,
like even
just like look at your roadmap. Where are you, first of all? And even if you don't have the best credit or what have you, it's just going to be a longer process. It's still possible. But then, it's almost like getting a workout plan. Like, okay, it's definitely possible for you to lose this, but like how, because of where you're starting, it's going to be, you're going to have to be more consistent and like put more into it versus
Yeah.
someone that's coming in, I think of it like 800 credit. They're going to have a different process. It's going to be a lot smoother.
Yeah, but it's also, yeah, like you said, just getting
Yeah.
a game plan, and like my mom always said, like, plan your work your plan, basically. So I mean, if you don't have like a goal or whatever, you don't have a deadline, you're never gonna get there. So
And so many people are out like doing it. Like he has so much knowledge that like if you did have a plan, and even if you talked to him and you were like, oh, I was going to do that. Oh, you know what? Like you should probably,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to save you. There's a mistake that this is probably going to happen. Hey, just let you know, you don't need to follow it. And maybe it's not the best advice for your situation.
Right.
But ultimately, if you start talking to the right people, you're going to be able to build a better roadmap for your situation once you kind of learn along the way.
Yeah.
Like, from the facts, like, hey, this happened to me, this happened, So it definitely, but that's why, like, which leads me to my next. Joe also with his partner Jake.
Yeah.
With Jake, they have a podcast also where they give it's Land Shark Financial Freedom podcast, and it's on Apple and Spotify, right?
Yep.
So they also break down and interview people, right? Are you guys interviewing?
Yeah.
And going over all of the steps and all of the tips and the tricks and all of the mistakes, I'm sure. Mistakes that are made, and, also all the benefits that they've had. So definitely check that out. And then what are, like, going into your podcast, what are the top financial lessons that you've shared that resonate the most, you think, with your audience?
I would say the top financial lessons that we try and teach people is just the basics sometimes, is going down to the basics, and, but ultimately it's about taking action. So, because, there are so many different strategies, so many different things that you can do. So, I guess just trying to figure out and pick the one that you want to do, or, like how it works for you. I guess I'll just give a good example. Like my wife, before we got married, she is a nurse and she made good money, and she was paying lots in taxes. And so, it's like, okay, let's figure out a way for you to kind of mitigate that. So instead of her buying something like a personal property in Huntington, because that's where she was living, and we weren't moving in until after we got married. So I said, okay, buy something either out of state or maybe buy something up in Big Bear, because I'm very familiar with that. And so she ended up buying something up in Big Bear, got an awesome price on it. Now she's had it a little over a year and is renting it out through Airbnb. She only had to put 10% down because she did a second home loan, which is, something I actually hadn't done before, but I knew about it. And so, but she got an awesome price because I look at the market every day. And, my dad and I did a lot of the work, and she did a lot of the work herself. And so we fixed it up, turned it into an Airbnb, and now she's got, a huge write-off with over $100,000 worth in equity. And so I think, everybody's situation is a little bit different. So, hey, if you can't, let's say, buy something for yourself, like, then pivot and buy something somewhere else that will help you gain income to pay for where you live, right?
Get you in a better position for when you are ready.
Right. Well, and now, hey, now she's building equity. Now, if she wanted to buy something else, then maybe we take some cash out and do that, or, but if you don't take action, you don't actually do it. If
it's 2 years later and you didn't do it, now you have no equity.
Right. Well, and so now she's got some tax write-off. She's got a cool place she loves to go. We get to use, and then, and then we got the equity, and there you go. And now all it takes is that one, just like how I started. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just took action and I did it. And thank God I did, even though like everyone thought I was crazy. So, I don't know. Hopefully that answers the question.
No,
but
it does.
I would say that's probably like the biggest advice sometimes, is like just actually like taking action, doing it, and but making a calculated risk.
Yep.
So don't go into a blindsided. And like you said, there's so many people out there now that are giving so much free knowledge that I didn't even really have or wasn't paying attention to back then.
At this point, I love YouTube, and I love. if I don't know, I'll pull up like YouTube at least to start to see who's talking about it, and then I'll dive deeper on those ones that resonate with me, or like that I see that are consistent, actively doing it, giving like full rounded advice. And then it's like subscribe, and then it's just like whenever and then I'll just be following, and you know, like anytime I have some free time, I'm trying to learn something. So it's like just to kind of have that to, I mean, that's going to get you closer.
Right.
And you never know, like they might drop, you might get that little tidbit that you were missing. You never know when that thing is going to click. And you might not even have known that you missed it. And it's like, oh my God, like somebody says something and it's just like, that's what I'm going to do. You know? So it's like you have to keep constantly putting yourself in front of people or environments and knowledge that's eventually going to lead to that click. And then it's just, once you have that click, then you're just like running towards it. Because now you feel like almost empowered, like, I have a purpose. I'm going here. So it's like, so thank you for your podcast and all the knowledge that you're bringing, you know, others, and just to let's keep educating and getting them out there. I do have, so every market has its risks. How do you assess and mitigate risk when investing in, like, especially because you have so many different ones? Do you kind of, I feel like you're a planner, so do you I feel like you have graphs and look and and look at each kind of area.
Well, that's a good question, because I think having like multiple exit strategies is always something that's good, you know, really depending on that type of property that you're buying. But like, for example, we have one in Gainesville, Florida, that's near the University of Florida, right? So when I was looking at those properties, not only, you know, but getting the property at the right price, I think that's really another key, that people are impatient. And so if you just make sure that you are due diligent and you get a really good deal on the property. But I'll just go through this one, like Gainesville, it's near the University of Florida. So it's got a couple major hospitals there. It's got the university there. So just, we had it set up as an Airbnb at first, and we were using it as an Airbnb, and it was doing okay. But, you know, then we come across the pad split kind of thing, and then it's like, boom, you know, switch it into a pad split. And now, you know, it's renting out like constantly, all the time for like full and everything like that. And but we got a really good price on it. So I mean, we bought it for like $260,000 on that one, but it's worth about $400 now, and we you know have had it maybe a little over like a year. I mean, we put in, I would say, about $20,000 to it. You know, I mean, it looks nice.
And now you were able to split it, though. You made that one bigger.
Well, so what we did was we just rented out each room individually. Instead of doing it as an Airbnb, because it was doing okay as Airbnb. It kind of got a little like wonky, but going into it, it was like, all right, if anything, we could, if we don't do it as an Airbnb, we can rent it out like midterm rental to traveling nurses or whatever. And then if anything, we can rent it long term. It won't cash flow as much, but it'll still cash flow more than what the payment is, right? So kind of having those extra strategies, but also getting the price at a good price. And then, hey, if we wanted to, we could always just sell it and move it into a different property, right? You know, so
that's always good, like hospitals, universities, because there's just always people coming in. What about like schools? Schools. I mean, so, you know, some markets that matters, some markets it doesn't. I think it actually matters a lot out here in California, but there's a particular flip that I'm doing right now that actually my agent's like, it doesn't really matter. This area will kind of sell all year round, because it's more of I guess like an established higher end kind of thing. So you know, so people, you know, aren't really worrying about like, oh, when school season is, when it isn't, it's
or
just
where it is. It's just always like that. So but yeah, I mean, each circumstance is a little bit different. I feel,
and those are probably going to be a little more, right?
What's that?
Like that real estate in areas like that. Do you think that those are already going to be a little more?
So
like California, like for weather, like you know, it's just ultimately at like a higher standard. So, and that's what another thing I was going to bring up. So like for example, that same house, I got it. Thank God I got a really good deal on it, because I ended up having to spend like double what my budget was, because I was planning on spending 70 and I'm probably close to like 130, you know, but I got it for 183,000, where, you know, hopefully I'll be listing it for 500. You know what I mean? So
I know I'm kind of like going off on these numbers, but like just going down to the point is making sure you just are super due diligent. Don't be like over anxious just to buy anything, and just make sure you get a good deal. Be patient, you know, because I even like those 3 rentals I got in that are long term in Georgia. I bought those directly from the selling agent. They were on the market, but I just watched them. I kept on seeing them, you know, sitting on there. They bounced back on the market, and I just get these alerts on my phone, and I pay attention to that, and I offer a price. If they don't want to work with me, that's fine.
After like a certain amount of time, do you look at like after 30 days?
Okay. Yeah, like right now.
And that's when you start calling them.
Yeah. Or if I'm looking at one and then it pops back up on my email and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll call. It seems like they're motivated because they dropped the price and it's back on the market. So, you know, but you know, it's about being patient.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
And for our viewers who are eager to invest, but are unsure kind of where to start, what actionable steps do you recommend to get them on the path to financial freedom?
I would say, like we were talking earlier, building a team. You know, so finding some people to
your team, as in like loan officer, agent. Oh, property manager would be a big one.
Property manager, or
contractor,
like you said, reaching out to somebody like me or anybody else that's investing who's in those certain markets, right? Well, they're in the certain markets. Hey, can I use it? Like, I mean, like I've told, like Bailey, you know, is he invests in Ohio, and my lady Faith, she's awesome. The property manager, she kicks such butt. You know, she even drove down from Ohio to Georgia to help me out with a couple of my flips. That's and awesome. so those are the types of people that, you know, make it possible for you to do things, right? And so just reaching out to other people who are investing in those markets. Hey, I'm thinking about this market.
Investing in themselves too, because that's huge.
Yeah, totally. Or family.
To do that for somebody else.
Or family and friends. Let's say somebody moves to a different, like you were saying, Texas. You want to buy something in Texas. So, hey, you know, who do I know that's in Texas that kind of knows the area better than I do? Yeah. You know what I mean? Because you don't know, and you can't think that you know everything. I mean, I still don't. I'm constantly learning every day.
Definitely. So. Yeah, I want to get somebody out there that already, like, take me to the next. Take me in the front of the line. I don't want to be back here.
Exactly.
I'll pay to go up.
Yeah, and sometimes
it's where you are.
Yeah, and sometimes it's worth that. You know what I mean? Like we actually have a small coaching program that we do for kind of like newbies, and we have 2 of them that are in our program that have invested with us, and they've made their money back. And then the same thing, like, you know, me in that mastermind I'm in with Amy Majuri and learning about raising private capital. Yeah, it cost me, you know, some money to get into that program, but I've made way more of it back because of helping others as well as investing with other people in that group, because they like me, they see what we do, so we partnered up, and you know, and
it's an investment.
Yeah, it's an investment.
Ultimately,
exactly.
You know,
so
it's investing in yourself and in them, and just basically in your future, like what you're trying to build. I mean, real estate is a long game, so it's definitely, if you have that right team, you're definitely going to go far. If you are doing it by yourself, it's not like it's not possible.
Right.
It's just you're going to have to do, you know, it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. Well,
a lot of things are going to break. A lot of things are going to go wrong. You know, when you could have maybe multiple conversations with someone that you know has kind of been through it or has also talked to those other people. So it really just, it's how you want to get there, you know?
Yeah. Well, it streamlines the process and gets you there faster. That's one thing that I'm glad you brought up, because honestly, I was doing everything by myself for so long, and then when I finally actually partnered up with somebody and then partnered up with somebody else, things just started taking off like crazy.
Yes.
And so I think that is definitely something that I would tell people.
And because now you're delegating, now you can cover more ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, Joe, thank you so much for just like wonderful insights and in multiple markets. So definitely check out his podcast. I'm going to list everything below to contact him. And Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming.
All right, cool.